Hey everyone, welcome to the guide to getting started in hiring. Hiring is one of the first new responsibilities which come up to you when you start becoming senior. Also, it is very easy to make mistakes here since the industry has some really bad practices in place for hiring. So, as we start off, let's talk about the different stages of a hiring pipeline. Note that this varies from company to company, but as an engineer, these are probably the steps that you would be participating in. This is also relevant to you if you're working as a team lead or as an engineering manager. The different stages of hiring are as follows: assignment, technical interview, and culture round. The assignment step, you send a small task to the person to be hired. Why send an assignment? Assignments allow you to get a first-hand experience of the person whom you are interviewing in their writing of code. It allows you to see if they're familiar with the best practices. It also allows you to set up the next technical interview round where you can essentially work on their assignment and get them and ask them more questions over it, and ask them questions on why they have done something, how they would be going about something if the question gets tweaked in a different fashion. And also, this is also a much better way of filtering candidates than going through the resumes. In my personal opinion, going through resumes is a pretty bad way of filtering candidates who are in the engineering domain. This is because a lot of good engineering candidates don't really pay enough time to creating good resumes, and often technical details end up making our resume just look weird and filled with jargon. My personal 2 cents: don't pay attention to resumes that much. Use pair programming and assignment reviews as a way to measure a person's skills. One of the most important things in the assignment review step is essentially making sure that your assignment is very clear. Oftentimes I've seen assignments with very soft requirements. It is an important thing to make sure that your assignments are crisp and clear. Otherwise, you'll get a different varieties of submissions from all of the people going through your assignment, and you'll find it very hard to judge whether that particular assignment is done well or not. Also, when asking developers to build an assignment, make sure it is something that can be done in the order of 1 to 2 hours. I've seen a lot of companies ask developers to build things which would take more than a day or two. Even certain companies have given assignments which take almost a week to build. This is absurd because most developers wouldn't have the time, because most of them would be interviewing while they are doing full-time jobs. So they won't be able to skip their day-to-day work just to participate in the assignment submission process. Once you have prepared the question for the assignment, you can do an experiment by sending it to folks in your team and asking them to essentially do that assignment. See if they are able to do it off in 1 to 2 hours. This is a very good way of making sure that your assignment is proper or not. If your assignment takes too much time, people will just drop off. What to check for in the assignment submission? There are many things that you can check for in the assignment submission and potentially tick a specific set of checkboxes. One of the things which might be important to you is if the person is able to deploy the application or not. You can ask them to, if it's a front-end application, you can ask them to deploy to Netlify or something. Or if it's a back-end application, you can ask them to deploy to something like Heroku or Railway.app. Heroku, I think right now is paid, and free alternative would be Railway.app. You can go through their code, ask them to basically submit their assignment via GitHub link or something, and go through their code, make sure that they have followed best practices as well as possible. If they haven't followed best practices, that generally indicates one or two things. Either they don't give that much importance to best practices, or they feel it's okay to skimp out on best practices, especially if you're short on time. Best practices are something which essentially should not be skipped in any assignment review, and this is something you should give corresponding importance to when reviewing the submission. Also, one of the most important things that I would like you to check is if they have tested all of the possible edge cases or not. I'll give a few examples of a good assignment versus a few examples of a bad assignment. A good assignment is something, take for example, for a front-end assignment, you will give them an API. Suppose an API like the OpenBooks API or some open API, something which is freely available to them, which is most available most of the time that they would be, and they can essentially build up it for free. You give them an API, ask them to build the front end of the application, ask them to host it on Netlify. This front end could essentially contain maybe say a table, and which will show the data. You can ask them to build features like implementing search on the data, implementing filters on the data, maybe even implementing something like sorting on the data, and ask them to figure out how to basically go about doing that, and based on how they have implemented, you can judge their skills. Example of a bad interview. So this is something you have come across in the past. Certain companies, they give an assignment like make me a clone of IMDb or make me a clone of Netflix or Book My Show. This is absurd. You cannot give people an assignment to build a full-fledged clone, because making a clone of a website essentially takes dedicated work, and it takes effort in the order of maybe a few days, which most people won't have when they're interviewing. So don't give assignments like that. Give assignments as small as possible, things that you would essentially be able to pull off in 1 to 2 hours, and see how well people are able to do in a span of a small time, and how well they're able to build things in a span of a small time. This is all with respect to the assignment submission. So the next thing that will be coming to is the technical interview. The technical interview is essentially the stage where you gauge the technical skills of the developer in question in as much depth as possible. Okay. The best way I've seen to do this is essentially by pair programming. The first thing you do is essentially you set up a call with the candidate, something maybe say set a maximum duration of maybe 30 minutes. Okay. Now they'll probably have sent you a GitHub link with the assignment code in the assignment submission wala stage. So what you want to do is essentially you can use VS Code editor on the browser and open that their source code. Now ask them to make small changes in it. You can ask them to implement a caching layer. You can ask them to implement maybe a modification on a specific feature. You are in the driver's seat, so you would be the person making the changes. The candidate would be in the navigator seat. They'll be telling you what to do. Using this pattern I have seen, I have been able to gauge very strong developer candidates and get a first-hand experience of how good the particular developer is and how good they are not only in development skills but also in the form of communication, which is actually a very important skill for senior engineers or engineers to have. After the pair programming session is over, the next thing that I would like you to do is essentially ask questions about the things they have worked on. Do a deep dive into specific things they talk about and keep on asking questions till you yourself know in depth how to implement the same thing by yourself. If they're not able to explain this to you, there is probably some kind of communication problem that they have, and it might not be a very good bet to take them on. So make sure that the person that you are interviewing is able to communicate properly, is able to make you understand things properly, and able to show things that they have worked on in quite depth. A few sample questions you can ask in this particular stage. What was perhaps the toughest thing that you have worked on in the last 6 months? Something that you're really proud of building. If they talk about a specific feature that they have implemented in a certain way, ask them, why did you decide to go this way? Did you consider alternatives? Ask them if they do code reviews. If the company has the culture of code reviews. If they do code reviews, what do they look for in the code reviews? This would essentially conclude the technical round. The technical round, essentially you want to gauge as much as possible the person in front of you, their technical skills, and if they are able to do what they claim to be able to do. After the technical round is over, essentially the next stage is culture round. The culture round is essentially a way to make sure if the person would be a good fit in your company. Now, the culture round varies a lot from company to company and reflect the specific values that the company has. On a high level, this particular stage is a little bit difficult to communicate and talk about because this, like I said, this varies from company to company. But I'll give you a high level guide on how to do this particular round. The culture round is essentially a way to gauge if the particular person who is joining, if they want to join your company or not. This is essentially a stage where you try to see if they have enough desire to join your specific company or they're just looking for some company as such just for a hike or something. The main idea behind this is if they want to join your specific company, then they would have done enough research about your company and they are likely to stay in your company for a longer duration after you convert them into full time. Now, what kind of questions do you ask? You start off with asking if they have checked out your website, maybe your blog. See if they know what you're about, if they have done their due diligence, if they have done research about the folks in your company. Ask them what their reason is on why they are switching. Ask if they have a valid reason on why they are switching, and is it just for they're not liking their work. If they're not liking their work, have they communicated this already to their current manager? If they have not, then why haven't they? That's an interesting question which comes up, because this may also happen with you in the future, that suppose this person reports to you, he gets irritated but he doesn't communicate this to you, he just starts looking for a different job. This is the pattern you would want to avoid. Ask them if they have offers from any other companies. You would want to know the cost to company of the companies that they have applied to and the offers that they have, because he might be thinking of a number beyond your current budget. Also, ask them if they already have an offer in hand, why are they looking out for a different opportunity? Ask them to state the reason. One interesting thing to gauge over here is if you like the person that you're talking to, and if you want to work with them. Even though it is feeling based, it is important, because if they join you, you would be working them for a very long time, correct? So it makes sense to see if you have a high bandwidth conversation while speaking to them. After you're done with all these 3 rounds, gather all of your notes and gather the notes of all of the people who were involved, and see if there are more than one person championing for this particular candidate. By championing, I mean those people should be having a very strong yes on whether they want this candidate in their team or not. If this goes through, then correspondingly it's good to essentially go ahead with offering the candidate. Remember to have empathy for the candidate who is applying. It is very easy to get carried away during interviews. So always remember to be as polite as possible and to be as humble as possible during interviews. Remember this whole thing also, that hiring is hard. You would only learn things as you go on doing hiring more and more. So on a high level, keep notes from every conversation that you have and keep improving on this skill over time. I've covered all I know about hiring, on at least the basics of getting started with hiring. So if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments.